Welcome to Behind the Book. It's time now for Behind the Book, hosted by Tess Thompson and Karen McQuestion, two authors with a passion for books, no filters, and limitless curiosity. Join them now to find out the real story behind your favorite books and authors. And now, Behind the Book.
Welcome to another episode of Behind the Book. I'm here with Karen McQuestion. Hello, Karen.
Hello, Tess. I was thrilled when Rea Frey said she would come on our show because I've actually been listening to her show, which is the Writeway podcast. And she and her partner, Joe Towers, are really candid about their experiences in the book world and publishing and experiences with editors and marketing. And I just thought she'd be so refreshing to have on. And she certainly was.
Yeah, she's a great guest. And we learned a lot about her process, but also just her insights into the publishing industry were very interesting.
And then also, as a little off to the side, this is going to sound very superficial of me, but how cool was she?
Oh my God, so cool. The minute she popped up on the screen, I was like, oh my gosh, Karen and I are not cool enough for this gal. Oh, I should just say myself, not include you.
Oh, no. I felt very schlumpy, and I thought you looked great. But I mean, she
had these long earrings on. They were like big circles, and her hair was up in this like cool twisted knot on top of her head. And she had these like really retro glasses. I don't know. She just looked really cool. Super pretty.
Well, and so pretty. And her skin was perfect, which I always notice because I don't have perfect skin. And the big glasses, it was like, I felt like I was in high school, like, oh, I should get glasses like that.
Yeah, totally. I was thinking the same thing. I'm like, why don't I wear these same earrings every day? I should get some cool earrings.
I know. I have to mix it up a little bit. But she couldn't have been nicer.
Yeah.
And she's, got a daughter and a husband and loves to write. And so we had a lot in common that way. But the cool factor was way off the charts for me.
For sure. And that's not the first guest we've had that has been cooler than us. But, that's fine. We're fine with ourselves the way we are.
We should probably explain to the listeners that when we interview guests, we can see them. It's like a Zoom call. And then what actually happens is just the audio is the podcast. But we've had a lot of guests that were very relieved to find that out.
Yes. Yeah, because most writers, unless we really have to, don't want to get out of our sweatpants and, our no makeup or whatever, just because we're always in writing mode.
Baseball caps, I think, are popular on bad hair days, too.
That's me for sure, yeah.
I wasn't going to say your name, but...
I know I'm not wearing one today, but normally I am. Just because my hair, since menopause, has decided now that it's curly. And so if I don't blow dry and everything, it looks like a clown's wig or something. So then I just have to put the hat on to save you from having to look at me.
I am quite sure it does not look like a clown, but okay.
Okay, well, it's not the same. It's not rainbow, but besides that, it's very similar. Anyway, all right, we'll let everybody listen to Rea Frey. I hope you guys enjoy it.
Today, we're very excited to have Rea Frey with us. Rea is the celebrated author of Not Her Daughter, Because You're Mine, Until I Find You, and the upcoming novel, Secrets of Our House. She also is the founder and CEO of Writeway, where aspiring writers become published authors. Thanks for joining us, Rea.
Thank you for having me.
Tell us about your path to publication. Have you always wanted to be a novelist?
No, actually, when I was little, I wanted to be like an Olympian or a veterinarian, but writing was always such a foundational element in my life. My dad is a fantastic poet. He really introduced me to reading and writing, and so I was a really voracious reader, and I loved to journal and write poetry, but I didn't think of it as an actual career. I grew up with that stereotype, the same stereotype that so many of us writers have, that this is a great hobby, but you can't actually make money at it. So I kind of grew up with that ingrained in my brain, but I still ended up going to Columbia College in Chicago for creative writing. I started in journalism, and then I was like, why not give this a chance? Let me just see what this is all about. So I went through that program. I got a really terrible novel published at 22 years old by nothing more than a vanity press. So I really felt like I learned everything not to do in publishing a book. I was so young and naive and eager to publish a book that I overlooked every red flag and just went for it to say that I was published. And after that experience, I was so burned by fiction writing that I did not touch fiction for over 10 years. And instead, I pivoted to nonfiction. I started learning about the publishing industry. I was able to have my hand in, I like interned at a literary agency. I was a journalist on death row. I worked for magazines and newspapers. And then I got traditionally published nonfiction, 4 books, health and wellness space. And I was like, cool, I'm doing this the right way. And realized like, oh, I can write a book, but now I need to actually know how to sell a book. And I didn't really have the author platform at that time. So here I was with 5 books under my belt. And I was like, what am I missing? Why am I not doing this successfully? I'm living up to my own stereotype. So from there, I really, truly finally took it upon myself to learn way more about the industry. I decided I wanted to go back to fiction, and I did it all differently. I knew by this time how to pitch an agent. I came up with a really hooky story idea. I was working 3 jobs at the time. I gave myself 8 weeks to write the book, quit 2 of the jobs, wrote the book in a month, landed the agent, landed a 2-book deal, then another 2-book deal and a movie deal. And just all this stuff like seemingly happened overnight, but it had been like a 10, 12-year journey to get there. Like I dipped a toe in super young, but I think the difference for me is that I took it upon myself to not only become a better writer, but to learn about the business. And I think that is a missing ingredient for so many people who want to write books today.
I first discovered you on the shelves at the local library and bookstores. But then another author friend steered me towards your podcast. And you are very candid about some of the highs and the lows. And my friend sent me this link to your podcast and said, you have to listen to this. She is so candid and so honest about the things we talk about amongst ourselves, but people don't generally say publicly. What, if you don't mind sharing with us, and I have a feeling you don't mind, you talked about the movie deal and the books and everything. What kind of things happened that weren't all that lovely and you didn't anticipate happening?
The thing that changed the game for me on our podcast is I did a solo episode called Dear Publishing Industry, F You, and let it all go. I mean, I said everything that no one says. And I really talked about a lot of my lessons learned because I feel like this industry more than any other is so romanticized. I remember my first book came out. People were like, well, did you hit the New York Times bestseller list yet? And like, when can your husband quit his job? Because you're obviously going to make so much money right off the bat. And I felt like becoming published was nothing more than dispelling all of these myths that people had about what it meant to write. And while my experience, especially with my first book, Not Her Daughter, my first, what I consider a real book, with the big 5, was awesome. I mean, we reached a lot of people. It sold well. We got great press. It still didn't perform to my level of success. And what I realized was success for most writers is hitting the New York Times bestseller list, getting picked for a book club, like something huge like that. And I realized as I became disappointed that those weren't actually my goals. Those were the goals that had been handed down to me. And no one told me differently. No one told me how to negotiate an advance and that I actually could do that and negotiate some of the rights in my contract. No one told me how to even read a contract or, again, what questions to ask of my team, what I should expect from my team, what I should expect them to do, and what I should not expect them to do. I'm also very honest that when my first book came out, I hired a publicist and continued. Let's see. So for the first 2-3 books that I put out with my publisher, I spent over $100,000 on events, publicists, digital marketing, and my internal team didn't really lift much of a finger to really help market and sell the book. So as we went book by book, I became more and more disillusioned, kind of more and more disappointed with their lack of efforts, because here I was churning out a book a year, but I was very mid-list. I didn't feel like they were very invested in growing me. So I wasn't the new shiny object. And I honestly feel like they kind of moved on. So I'm really open, both in my business with my clients who want to get published, on our podcast, and to anyone who wants to talk about it, about just the realities of being an author. It's great, but it's also really hard. And there's a lot that people don't prepare you for. And there are hacks to that and ways that you can do this. You can make great money and really build yourself up book by book. But I don't think we're often given the tools to do that. No one teaches you how to be an author.
And I think too that in traditional publishing, they seem to be stuck in a way of doing things.
Oh.
And I'm getting a reaction from you here. And it's like change is glacial for them. I remember when I first self-published in 2009, and I remember thinking, at some point, the big publishers are going to get wind of this. And they are, maybe not their front list, maybe not the new books, but they have a whole wealth of backlist. They are going to start pricing them competitively. They are going to start targeting them for the digital, and they are going to make a killing. And they are going to wipe out all us self-published indie authors. And so I kept thinking, at some point, this is going to happen. So I better, maximize this while I can. And it just never happened. Even to this day, there's a little bit of it, but not to the extent I would have thought.
Yeah. So Rea,
No.
I'd love to hear your take on why that is. Like, what is the psychological reason that they have not caught up to the indie world?
I mean, I think it's, and I don't want to generalize the statement, but I talk to a lot of people in this industry, and it's still a very patriarchal system. It's very old school. It's an old boys club and some regards. And I think it really comes down to money, and that they are businesses at the end of the day. But what I never understand is why they're not willing to invest in their authors and recoup those costs and change, like so many industries have had to. Like the music industry has wildly changed, and there's still a lot of ups and downs with that industry as well. But I look at a lot of digital publishers who are really changing the game and paying their authors better and doing more for their authors. And I just think there is this resistance. It's just the way things have always been done. It's a very antiquated industry. I almost feel like there's this pride or ego around it. Like, no, this is the way it's done. And whereas, when I put out that solo podcast and I was like, I'm going to get blacklisted, my publisher's going to drop me. My publisher, of course, never listened to it. But I had huge authors reaching out to me, mid-list authors, self-published authors, indie authors saying, thank you for saying what no one else will say. And I think we're part of the problem, though, too, in that this is our IP. This is publishers don't work unless writers are willing to give over their work. And I think we have to become better advocates and stand up for our rights in order for the publishers to ever even realize they have a problem. Because so many authors I know just kind of okay, thank you. They don't really know what to ask for, what they can and can't say. I'm leaving my publisher. We had a big talk because I'm not doing this anymore. I was with you to say that I was with the big five, but I've been very disappointed. It would have been a very great relationship. But because I asked questions, because I wasn't willing to just sit back and go with the flow, I think I ruffled some feathers. And I think that's what authors are going to have to do in order for it to change. I think it starts with us actually, and not the publisher. And I think a lot of times we sit back and wait for things to change instead of realizing that we can.
Yeah, and I think you're onto something. I know I felt like this early in my career before I went indie, that, oh, please somebody publish me to tell me that I am legit, that give me that cred, even to my own self. So I think that's part of it too.
Definitely. And I think it's unfair, though, that for a lot of authors, it's either, okay, I'm going to wait to be picked and validated, or I'm going to self-publish, which I think is amazing. However, it's still so much work. It's still really hard to break out. It can be very overwhelming to realize like, oh gosh, I've got to like market and sell and make every decision, which is amazing. But some people either don't have time for that or are really intimidated by that. So I feel like there's got to be, I don't know, just change all around. So it doesn't, that's not just our fallback as self-publishing, which again, I think is so amazing, but that's still not a perfect industry in and of itself. And it has a lot of challenges, I think.
Although I have to say, I've done both. And I often hear people say that because then you have to do everything. And there is more to keep track of. There's more details, et cetera. It's more like running a business. But in my opinion, it is way more joyful. To have the creative control. And we have interviewed a lot of authors. And I would say that the indie authors, the self-published authors, are all kinds of happy. They are looking forward to different projects. They're thinking maybe they want to switch genres, or maybe they'll co-write with a friend, or maybe they'll put out a novella, or, they're like thinking ahead. And the traditionally published authors are varying degrees of happy.
See, and I love that. And I'm at a weird crossroads where I'm working on this book. I'm super excited about it. And I'm like, what do I want to do with it? I've never self-published. I've thought about it over and over again. What I'm not great at, and I talk about this all the time, but like, I wanted to be a writer. I didn't necessarily want to be a social media guru or a marketing whiz or salesperson. And that's really where I struggle actually is I can sell in my business. That's easy for me, but selling your book and pushing your book in ways that feel really good to you. Have you found the marketing side of self-publishing, has that been easier, better, different? Because I think that's the only thing that keeps me from taking the jump.
I will say that there was a learning curve for sure. But when I just said to myself, you know what, I'm going to do this. Like, and Karen was a great inspiration to me, actually, because I was seeing the things she was doing. And I was like, okay, well, she can do it. I could do that too. And several of our other friends that are really successful. So I think it's more daunting before you do it than it actually is.
I'm a big fan of what I call passive marketing. They're not real world events. I'm not going online saying, buy my book, buy my book, buy my book. And I believe that just in marketing in general, what you want is for people to want to buy your book, not because you're pushing it, but because something about it intrigues them. So I feel like packaging the book correctly, which is the cover, the title, the description, the price point, to me, that's really key. That could be 50% of the marketing right there. And it's done once and it's done. So that's part of it. And then the second things I like to do are Facebook ads, Amazon ads, things that you put it out there and it gives the book visibility and people can choose whether to click on it or not. And if you can do it in a way that the metrics work and you still come out ahead, then you just let them run and you go live your life and you work on your next book and you check on them periodically. And there is an expense in marketing that way, but there's always an expense. And all businesses, Coca-Cola is a worldwide brand. They still have commercials and they still have ads. Yeah. It's just the way of the world. So as an introverted person who I never considered myself to be super business savvy, there are resources and people out there that will point the way. And then if you've got the drive and the business sense and you run a business already, and you sound like you have the drive, it's actually so much fun. I can't even tell you. I'll run an ad and then I'll go check on did people click on it and how many people clicked on it and how many, and tweak it. If that didn't work, I'll try something different. And it's all me doing it. I'm not relying on what are you doing to promote my book or how can I partner with you to promote my book or why aren't you getting in front of the right people or, so that's sort of my take on it. Once you start doing it, it's addictive, isn't it, Tess?
Oh, for sure.
When you can actually see that what you're doing is working, then you want to do more of it.
What a concept, right? And that's the thing. I'm like sitting here like, yes, why would anyone choose anything other than this? Because so many authors I know just, we feel this perpetual frustration with our teams that they just, didn't do what they are there to do. And they become just like a printing press, a very expensive one where you're only recouping maybe $1 if you ever earn out your advance. And I also love with self-publishing, there's not this crazy pressure to do everything in the first 2 weeks or the first 6 weeks. It's like you can continue to promote forever. Whereas with like my publisher, for instance, I put out a book a year. They don't push my backlist. And it's just like, cool, that came out. Okay, on to the next thing. That came out, on to the next thing. So there's never just this like really kind of rich sales strategy, honestly. So I love that you're both doing that.
Well, and the other thing that's really cool is if you pick the wrong cover, you can change it out. There's so much flexibility in it. So I think that's another huge plus.
And I'm married to a designer. I mean, we format and edit and do cover design for authors who want to self-publish. The majority of people who come to us in our business at Writeway want to be traditionally published, but it's like we've gone through these steps with our clients, and I have no idea why I haven't just taken the leap.
Well, yeah,
it's scary, I think.
It is scary. I was scared too because my publisher closed down very abruptly in 2016, I guess it was. And so I was like, should I do this? And my husband, who's very business savvy and business oriented, he's like, I don't see any monetary reason why you wouldn't self-publish. It makes no sense to do anything else. I was like, because he's like, you're already doing all these things anyway, and the publisher's taking all the money.
Yes, they are. They are indeed. Yep.
When you talked about how publishers are interested in the shiny new thing, and I think that's even true. For instance, my editor retired and I got a new editor. I wasn't what she would have chosen. So, and it's not just me. I've heard this from lots of authors and lots of different publishing houses. It's like, you're yesterday's news. And you're like, but people are still reading my books and I'm still getting good reviews. And,
it's heartbreaking. I mean, that's been the most heartbreaking part of this journey. And I think it's really important for your listeners to hear that, because the reason I went with St. Martin's Press was because of my editor. She read my book in one sitting. It was her husband's birthday. And her husband was like, hey, are we going to go celebrate? Or are you going to sit and read this book? And she was like, I'm going to sit and read this book. And our relationship was just so beautiful. I've never had a bigger advocate in my entire life. And then it was weird. It was just like, she got bigger authors. She got really busy. She got promoted. I still stayed with her though for all 4 books, but her enthusiasm, I mean, I visibly saw it just kind of crash and crumble when I still felt the same in our relationship and was really excited about where things were going. And it was like a very long 4-year breakup, honestly. And it's pretty traumatic. Like when you find someone you connect with, they choose you, they're going to put all this, time and attention into you, and then they just decide to move on. So again, I love the idea of taking that control back, putting out, because I think about that now. I'm working on a book. I'm so excited about it. And I'm like, okay, if we shop it, that book won't even come out till 2024, probably. Whereas if I did it myself, I could get it out. Oh, I mean, I'm a very fast writer, and I could get it out in a few months if I wanted to. So as authors who are traditionally published, I just think we have to break down these mental barriers or reasons why we feel like we can't do that, or that it legitimizes our experience less in some way, because that's not true at all. In fact, I feel like it's quite the opposite.
Now, you've spoken on your podcast about losing the joy in writing, and that a recent project turned things around for you. Would you mind telling us about that?
Yeah. So kind of 2 projects, but the one that brought it back. So my podcast co-host, Joe Tower, and we are both writers. He hasn't self-published and he still really wants that like traditional publishing dream, but he is a fantastic writer. And we decided to partner up on this kind of domestic horror piece called Haunted. And we started off with a really, it's very short. I mean, we only got like 18,000 words into it. And we're actually going to turn it into a full-length novel. But that book and that concept just flowed out of us. It was a different genre for me. He kind of writes in that genre. And we had both been feeling kind of disgruntled, not very passionate, because publishing can become very churn and burn. And I mean, that's something else, is that like you have these insane deadlines that you have to meet. Actually, one of my good friends, she ended up getting a 4-book deal with a digital publisher. Then she got a 2-book deal with one of the big 5 at the same time and was so overwhelmed with her deadlines. She ended up like going on antidepressants just to deal with the deadlines. And I'm like, this shouldn't feel like that. We should be able to write when we want to write, take chunks of time to process or edit and not be beholden to anyone else's schedule or deadline. And for Joe and I, like, it was just the most amazing in the flow experience. Like, I haven't been truly in the flow like that in such a long time. It was just great. And it kind of turned the light back on for both of us where we were like, we do like this. We do love this. And who am I to say that a publisher or an experience has the right to ever like take that joy away? That's something that I am not willing to let go of ever again. And I've really since then found like my joy, and I'm, working on this other book I'm really excited about. So it was a great catalyst for just reminding myself why I'm doing this in the first place. It's not to be picked, but it's because I love it.
Yeah. And I think that's why we all start writing. We love to tell stories. It's just the creative process is so exciting. And then it becomes part of a business. And that's something that I found with the editing process. I remember I wrote a rom-com and my editor said, and it was a completed manuscript. It was when I was submitted and they bought it based on that. And then I got the notes back and it said, maybe Dalton should have amnesia. And I was like, well, people love amnesia books, but that's not what this is. Sure. And I was like, how random is that? I read it like she was going to put LOL after it or something, but it was like, no, she was serious. I'm like, that would be a completely different book. Yeah. So that can kind of suck some of the joy out of it too, when you feel like people are trying to shape it in a way you didn't intend.
Yes, that has happened with every one of my books, actually. The first book, the ending, I really fought for a different ending with that book and didn't really win. My second book, I sold this first book that I wrote really, really quickly. And then I had 3 other books to write and I had no idea what I wanted to write because I hadn't touched fiction in 10 years. And Not Her Daughter was it just flew out of me. It was a total out of body experience. So I was like, oh no, I have to come up with 3 more stories pretty quickly. So every book was such a different experience than writing Not Her Daughter. It was very co-created, went through many iterations and drafts. I remember my 3rd book, Until I Find You, I turned in the draft. I knew what my editor expected by then. I was so excited. And I remember getting her notes back and she was like, yeah, this hits all the marks, but now I want you to trash this and start over because I want you to be better and do better. And I mean, she was great at pushing me to go beyond, but it also, besides the joy factor, I started to not trust my own instincts as a writer, to tell a story that would sell. And I know that you can't please every reader. And I mean, 100%, it doesn't matter. You could write the most perfect thing and someone would find issue with it. But I realized that I wasn't always able to tell the story that I had intended to sell. It was too dark. It was too thrillery. It was too suspense, too this, too that. And I realized I don't like fitting in this little box. I can't move in here. And so that has been another factor of gosh, once you get traditionally published and you were boxed into a genre, it's not always easy to just break out and flex, your creative muscles. And I think as writers, it's really important to grow and try new things. And I mean, what kind of industry is that if you cannot do that? And I don't mean to say, this sounds like just bag on the publishing industry today, but but again, it's a conversation worth having because 80% of people want to write books. It's that thing oh, you're published, but this is the reality of that. It is not, we're only hearing about the really, really huge success stories. Mm-hmm. We're not hearing the everyday author's story. And I think it's important for people to hear.
And I think that if there are to be changes in the publishing industry, the change I would most want is that the authors it's treated like a true partnership.
Yes.
Because right now, the attitude is very much, you're lucky we picked you, as you pointed out, or you chose. And basically, we call all the shots. And to me, it's, I understand that they've got the financial investment, but this is also, our heart
I
and blood,
do.
our intellectual property, we're bringing something to the table that they desperately need. So I don't really understand that attitude.
Oh, I mean, I've never worked well for others. It's why I started my own business. It's why I've never worked a traditional 9 to 5. I'm like, why am I boxing myself in where I'm getting told no at every single turn? I don't have any input in my covers. I don't have any input with the way that they market or I mean, it's really kind of bizarre. There is not a partnership. It's very like, just wait to be contacted. Don't ask too many questions. So I agree with you completely. It's very strange. It would be a great change to see that. And that's not to say a lot of smaller publishers I've worked with in the past are fantastic. And you can go straight to the publisher and there's a lot of input. And so there are wonderful, wonderful publishing experiences out there for authors. But a lot of times, unfortunately, with the big boys, you don't get a lot of say so.
Now, when you said you fought to have a certain ending for one of your books,
Yes.
were you able to keep your ending or did it end up being changed?
No, I was not. And it's funny because that book, it's the biggest issue readers have with it is the end of it. But my editor and I, when we talked about that after the fact, she was like, let's make sure going forward that you never feel that way again. So she was very open to communication about that because I really felt like I didn't write the end that I felt in my heart I needed to write. So yeah, but she was definitely willing to have that conversation going forward. So we never ran into that issue again.
It seems like when you're a young author, and by young, I mean just starting out, you don't realize that you can push back. You just feel like, well, they're the publisher, they know best or whatever. And I think you need to give yourself a little bit of power because it is your story.
Yes. Like I know so many authors that are like, no, cool, I'll take this. Like, it doesn't matter to me. I don't really need to get paid. And you should care because those contracts from the traditional publishers are so hard to read. They're so one-sided. You're basically signing your life away and you need to be comfortable with that decision if that's what you want to do. But there are things that you can do. There are things that you can ask for. There are ways to negotiate. And that's why it's so important if you're going the traditional route to have an agent who really advocates for you and knows how to help you negotiate and learn all those terms.
And knows the contracts.
Yes.
Because most people don't understand. I know the legalese in most of those contracts are just intense.
And my eyes start to cross like second paragraph. I'm like, wait, I don't even know what this is. I don't even know what I just read. Okay, so you've mentioned your business a couple times. Tell us more about that. What do you do with authors?
Yeah, so I'll preface this by saying I've worked with authors for as long as I've been a writer, actually always as a side hustle though. So people would come to me for either ghostwriting, developmental editing, copy editing, proofreading, pitching to agents. And then my specialty became creating nonfiction book proposals that truly sell. And so I really got into this side hustle super hardcore in 2018, 2019. I was like, wow, this is really working. This should be a business. So right before the pandemic, I decided to start an official business called Writeway. And we really just help authors get published. And whether that means self-publishing or traditional publishing, we really start with what their big goals are, what their big why is. We were doing fiction and nonfiction, but we've really stepped into this year just doing nonfiction and specifically around the nonfiction book proposal. Our methodology works. The last 2 years, we've had over 60 clients land agents and book deals in the traditional space. And these are people that they're not really writers. They are business owners, brand gurus, influencers, lifestyle experts, whatever it is. And they need a book to legitimize their brand or business. So for them, it's just a product and an arsenal of other products. And it really serves a purpose and is, I think, a much easier sell than fiction can be. Because with fiction, it's like, we're here to entertain. We're not solving problems necessarily. So we really serve nonfiction clients. We still take on fiction clients from time to time. We work with self-published authors. And then we have our podcast that really kind of tells absolutely everything there is to know about the publishing industry in general. And we kind of again, lift that curtain so writers can start to make informed decisions about how they want their careers to go.
I'm interested in your upcoming novel, which comes out February 8th. Is that right?
Correct.
Secrets of Our House, because I noticed that the cover is a little different than your previous 3 books. How is that different, and why did you decide to go in that
Yeah.
direction?
Well, so I didn't decide to go in that direction. With the cover, actually, I love this cover. It feels very grown up to me compared to my first 3 books. So this book is a little bit of a departure from my previous 3. The previous 3 are very kind of domestic suspense, so rooted in relationships, but they have that suspenseful thread. This one is way more family saga, family drama. It's a little bit richer landscape, really dives into kind of familial relationships and, the secrets that we can keep from each other and ultimately can cause a little bit of destruction at the end of the day. But yeah, so this book has been way different, but it's funny because my publisher is still kind of marketing it as a suspense, and early readers have been like, this is not a mystery. This is like family saga, family drama. But it's fun because I'm kind of dipping my toe into a little bit more women's fiction as I go forward. So this was a perfect bridge to kind of see how my readers responded or will respond.
Do you keep a list of story ideas, or how did you decide what the next 3 books would be when you got to that point?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'm someone who usually an idea will come to me almost in its complete form. Like I'll just kind of see it from start to finish and be like, oh, I gotta go write that. I would love to say I am very organized and I'm a plotter and I do all these things, and I don't. I'm a total pantser. I sit down, I write the book, it comes out, I tear it apart and just kind of go. I fast draft is basically what I say. But usually the story comes to me first, always the story or the character. For this book, Secrets of Our House, the main character is actually this monstrous black house that is this dream getaway home for this family of 3. And they're going to go for the summer in hopes to repair. This couple wants to repair their marriage. Their daughter's about to go off to college, and they really want to try to get back to being a family again. And I remember I was on a book tour and I stopped at my fellow writer's house, Emily Carpenter, and she had just this monstrous black house that was pretty much my dream house in the middle of nowhere. And I was like, this is the perfect house for a murder. This is amazing. And there's no murder in my book, but I wanted to create this character, this container. So that was my first character. And that's kind of how this story came to me, was because of this black house. And I wanted to put this very put together, like Chicago city family. I wanted to take them, drop them in the wilderness on the top of a mountain, and see what happened. So this one was a little bit different to put together.
I always love hearing what authors say was the impetus for story.
Yeah, me too.
This is the first time I've heard a house. So that's cool.
Yeah.
Usually it doesn't happen that way, but it's fun.
Yeah, setting first. I've heard that before, but not that specific. That's awesome.
And the Blue Ridge Mountains, like I live in Nashville. I go to North Carolina all the time. So this is actually the first fictitious town I've created. It's called River Falls. It's in North Carolina, like in the Blue Ridge Mountains. So it was really fun too to create a fake town. I've never done that before, but I really loved it. I loved the freedom that came with it and people, not being able to necessarily recognize anything. It was really fun.
You have to make sure, though, that you don't pick a name of a town or city that's existing. Yeah. That's the first thing I do when I do something like that. I go check. It's like, shoot.
All right. Well, we have a whole bunch of fun little rapid fire questions, and you're going to be awesome at this, I can tell. So what is one food that will never get past your lips?
I know this is going to sound crazy. Sushi. I don't eat sushi. I might be like the only human that doesn't eat sushi.
No, we've heard that one before.
Yeah.
Who would you want to play you in a movie?
Oh, God. Oh, that's such a good question. I'm 40. Who's 40 and an actress? Oh, God.
Amy Adams.
Yeah, maybe Amy Adams, Emily Blunt.
Ooh,
one of those.
Be good.
Yeah.
Yeah, Emily Blunt would be perfect for you. Yeah. I just cast you in that.
Yeah, great.
What superpower would you pick given the opportunity?
Are these like traditional superpowers or no? I think I would want to have like everlasting health, like to go through this life and never have to worry about getting sick, and just the freedom that might come with knowing that you're going to be healthy no matter what.
That's a good one. What's your biggest guilty pleasure?
This is so cliche, but at the end of a long day, when I'm just, despite all of the, how I say, like, I'm not going to do this tonight, it's like literally sitting in front of the TV, like binging a show, like eating my face off, like just totally zoning out, turning my brain off. Definitely a guilty pleasure, one that I wish I could, kill from time to time.
What is the worst job you've ever had?
It's funny because I haven't taken a lot of jobs. I always create my jobs. I was a personal trainer for 15 years and had a really bad boss. I was the head of a weight management department, and he was the most micromanaging, terrible person. I ended up quitting very shortly after, but I think that's the theme today is I don't like being told what to do. So that was not a right fit for me.
You are in good company with Karen and me, that's for sure.
Yeah.
If you could instantly become an expert in something, what would it be?
This is going to sound crazy, but maybe not given the state of things in the last 2 years. I'm really into health and very into holistic wellness, but virology, I am fascinated by because no one knows what's going on. So I would love to know kind of everything there is to know in that space.
What's your favorite smell?
The top of my daughter's head, she's 9. It smells like literally like bottled sunshine. It's my favorite smell in the whole world.
Okay, that was my answer too. And I felt like afterwards, because Karen interviewed me for last week's podcast, and afterwards I thought, that is a really weird thing to say. And my daughter's 15, and it's still my favorite smell.
No, I mean, I will go around just like just sniffing constantly. It has not changed since she was a baby, and it's my favorite smell on earth. Love it.
Same here. What is the most terrifying thing you've ever done?
Ooh, I have so many. I had brain surgery when I was 19 and literally thought I was going to die. Like never had a surgery before, had a arachnoid cyst on the verge of hemorrhaging, got brain surgery during my spring break freshman year of college. And the neurosurgeon was like, hey, right before he wheeled me in, he's like, you got to say goodbye to your family because we don't know what's going to happen.
Oh my
and
God.
I thought I was going to die. So it was absolutely horrifying. And then the second kind of tied with that is I had a 52-hour labor with my daughter and also thought I was going to die. It's why we only have one child. So both of those are so neck and neck.
Wow. Those are good ones. What's one thing you're really bad at?
Reading directions. If anything comes with directions, I'm like, nope, not doing it, not putting it together. And my husband can put anything together, take anything apart. But you give me like a packet of directions and I break out into a cold sweat. I can't do it. Can't do it.
Okay, I think we might be related because you're answering all the same. I'm the same way. Let's see. If you could live your life over again, would you want to?
Ooh, I mean, yes and no. I mean, that's such a tough question. It's actually a question I'm researching for this book that I'm writing, but no, because I wouldn't have the family I have now. Yes. So I wouldn't get married the first time at 22 because it was just, no one should get married when they're 22. There are definitely some things I would change and not take it all so seriously, but I don't think I'd have what I have now. And I'm really into appreciating what it is I have and not wanting something else right now. So no.
Final answer. No.
No.
Well, this has been so much fun. We were looking forward to interviewing you for weeks now. So, and where can everybody find your podcast?
So I am super old school. We're so weird in that we don't really promote on social media. I have an Instagram at Rea Frey, but we do everything really through our website and our newsletter. So podcast is available wherever you listen to your podcast, but you can find out more information about us, our business, our podcast at writewayco.com. It's WRITEWAYCO.com.
Great. Well, thanks again. And we look forward to keeping up with you and your publishing journey, whatever comes next.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening to Behind the Book, brought to you by authors Tess Thompson and Karen McQuestion. Don't forget to subscribe to the podcast and post a question in the comment section. This has been Behind the Book.